Good afternoon. Happy Friday. I'm your host, Tony Twist's ATW All Things Wrestling podcast. And man, it seems like all the time in between from show to show, so much crazy stuff happening. WWE, AEW. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan right now. And my guests that are coming on here momentarily. Sammy Kiss, the voice of Wildcat Sports, great friend of the show, has been on a bunch of times, co-hosted with me and everything. And to say he's anything less than phenomenal would be an understatement. And here he is, the phenomenal Sammy Kiss.
You know, I think that phrase has been trademarked. I'm pretty sure, but I'll take it if you let me have it. I appreciate that, man.
Well, if AJ Styles reaches out to me, I'll gladly address it on the show.
Yeah.
So,
Everything in wrestling is stolen anyway, so you know.
Right? It's like in music, it's in movies, it's in anything in entertainment has already been done.
Yeah.
To death. But it's like, how well are you going to do it? The 100th time around, right?
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, wrestling I think is the same thing as anything else in entertainment. We just want to hear more and more stories, just the same, but it's the same story over and over and over and over again. But there's always new people coming out into the world that haven't heard those stories yet. So we just keep telling the same story over and over again. It's great though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey man, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's been a while since we chatted.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I don't remember the last time I was on the show. I know you took a little bit of a hiatus, but glad to see that everything is moving back. I see you've gotten a lot of guests coming on. I appreciate you having me on. I know that our schedules kind of conflict. You know, it feels like whenever you have an opening, I'm always on the road or something like that. So I'm glad I was able to make time to be able to come on here.
Yeah, no, man, thanks a lot. I can't remember the last time we had you on. I did take quite a bit of a hiatus, had some stuff going on, but yeah, we're back. I don't do the show typically Sundays anymore. It's just kind of like whenever my guests are available, and in your industry, you guys are on the road 24/7. It seems like, and it's like just trying to grab somebody. It's like, hey, they say I could do an interview this day, this time. Can you do it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't lock my show down like Sunday anymore. So
you never know when all things wrestling will pop up. I kind of like it. So yeah,
and still doing the show live. I love doing it live. So I think that's probably that's my favorite way to do it. I don't like taking a show, recording it, editing it, all that. Get all the good stuff. I want genuine reactions of things. But hey, man, I know you've been busy. I saw you link up with Chris Van Vliet,
Chris Van Vliet, Chris Van Vliet. Yeah, he came into so Booker T's school, Reality of Wrestling, is out of Texas City, just right outside of Houston. And they've been working a lot with NXT lately, so they've been getting a lot of big names coming through pretty consistently. But Chris Van Vliet came in there, did an interview with Booker T, talked with Brad Gilmore. There's a lot of big things going up with them. They just signed with ESPN, the Booker T's Hall of Fame podcast. So they got a lot of good stuff. So it was great to catch up to see Chris Van Vliet in person finally, and talk with him, talk about wrestling and stuff like that. Very, very nice guy. Is exactly the way he comes off on his show in real life. So as is, surprisingly more people than you think. But it was great meeting him.
Yeah, it seems like this guy he's been popping up so much lately.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's like the official guy for the WWE now, but they're showing all these interviews he's been doing with Undertaker and pretty much he's sitting down with anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
From the WWE.
Oh yeah, that one with the Undertaker. It's so weird watching the Undertaker do interviews because I know he was on Joe Rogan before, and then he's on Chris Van Vliet, he's got his one-man show. It's just he's that one guy that never peeled back the curtain at all for so long that it feels like he's kind of flushing it all out as much as possible now, and it's pretty nonstop, which is great because he was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. So it's great to see him. He's got so many stories just because he talks so much. You'd think he'd be done, but it feels like you're just scratching the surface. He's always talking about something new. Every time he does one of these interviews, it's always about all new stuff, which I always think is great.
Now I know you've been to some of the events for like Mania Week and this and that.
Yeah.
Have you caught his show?
No,
That
I haven't been to his show. I was in town when it was going on, but I usually have something going on that's at the same time as the show more often than not is what it is.
right.
I've heard that it's great. You know, I did get to see his Hall of Fame induction, and that kind of felt, especially in hindsight, like kind of a rehearsal because that was such a unique. I mean, it's special because it's him, but it was so unique that he had like the headset where he didn't have a hand microphone during his induction and stuff like that. That kind of felt like he was getting ready to go and do what he's doing. And I've heard from people that have been to it that it's really great.
Yeah, I mean that's something. I'm always a big fan of like the behind the scenes stuff, and when they do pull the curtain back, and I love hearing stories. I mean, you've been on the show a bunch of times, and just the stories that you guys in the industry that can tell. It's like I'm all ears. Like I want to hear
Yeah,
it. Like I eat it up. Like that stuff. That stuff's just so awesome.
yeah,
The behind the scenes. What went into the match. They just recently had the Hell in the Cell anniversary with him and Mick
yeah,
Foley.
yeah.
And I mean, man, that match till this day. I mean, you're like you've seen this match a
Yeah.
bunch of times. You've seen the highlights of it a million times, and to still watch it, it's just like, oh, when Mick comes crashing through that cage, it's like, man, it like it never surprises you.
It's
Uh,
weird that
or I mean, it still surprises you. I mean,
yeah, and I mean the fall through the table is spectacular. It's got
right,
the effect you hit and stuff like that. But I think the one that's way worse that deserves I think even more credit, if not is what is the second. It's the choke slam where the cage breaks and he goes and he hits he just moves and you just see him stop. It's not as it feels like it's just like when the tables don't break on the outside of the ring. Whenever it obliterates it's a better show, but if you
right,
think about it, if they get slammed really hard and it doesn't move, it
yeah,
actually is way worse. Like that actually is the one where you should be like, oh, because that means that like it didn't give, which means it hurt the guy way more. So yeah, I don't know how that guy. I mean, I believe Mick Foley was at one point very recently training to maybe have one more match, but I think through that training, he thought better of himself. So I talked a little bit about that with him. We had Mick Foley at our Wildcat event in April, so I was able to talk to him a little bit about that. Super, super, super nice guy. Um,
yeah. I mean, he's if anything, I think I've heard from other people that met him. He might be the nicest guy in pro
yeah,
wrestling.
yeah. I was doing an interview with one of our young women talents, Gigi Ray, and we kind of had some bullet points about we wanted to go over with her. She and Promise Braxton just did this huge tour in Japan, and it was her first show back with us since coming back to the States. So we were kind of touching on that, and she was trying to think of a way to kind of wrap it up, and she kept like messing it up, like not finding exactly what she really wanted. And Mick Foley kind of on his own just kind of was like, hey, I would love to do something with you, and kind of turned it into this whole thing involving Mick Foley, which was so awesome. Like he didn't need to do that at all. You know, a lot of guys
Right.
when they come to these signings, they just are there for a paycheck, which is not, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is a business, but he's someone that continually is always going out of his way to help the next generation, move forward. And that was something that I thought was really cool of him.
Yeah, that's so awesome. He's a guy I would, have these meet and greets and stuff, and I would love to meet Mick Foley. He seems like a big teddy bear.
Yeah, he's a big guy too. Like it's weird when you watch. It's like probably his most famous thing is the Hell in the Cell.
Right.
And when he's next to Undertaker, Undertaker makes most people seem small, but when you next to Mick Foley, you realize just man, this guy is I remember I think Jim Ross refers to it during the show that when Undertaker and Mick Foley are on the cage, he takes a step and you see it kind of give, and he mentions that they were two super heavyweights up there. And I always kind of thought like, I don't know if I would call really either of those guys super heavyweights, and I don't know why that is. I just always thought of because Undertaker is very tall, but he doesn't seem like as on camera as like a wide guy. Like he doesn't
Like
seem
like Kevin Nash. He looks more like a
yeah,
house.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like like obviously Undertaker's probably north of 300, but like I don't know why. I always think of the super heavyweights as like guys like Mark and like the Big Show, the guys that go like 400, 500 pound kind of guys, as if like 300 pounds isn't a ridiculously large amount of man. So yeah,
Right.
but
I
no,
mean,
yeah,
Brock Lesnar's in the 300 somewhere, and he's definitely a super
yeah,
heavyweight.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
He goes up and down too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's especially with the legitimacy when he went to UFC of moving into those different weight classes and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, Foley though, every bit of a giant teddy bear as you would expect.
No, well, that's awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, man, in the world of wrestling right now, since the last time we chatted, I mean, the world's gone crazy. CM Punk's come back to
Yeah,
WWE.
yeah,
I mean, just so many things. But I want to ask you and get your thoughts on this. The craziest rumor that's happening right now is that Shane and Vince McMahon are buying AEW. I mean, this might be
yeah,
one of the craziest things I think I've ever heard. But in the world of wrestling, it's never say never.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a big what if, right? First thing in wrestling is you can never say never. Um, that is possible. I think the last couple of years, which only the stories with the McMahons,
Right.
you can never say never, right? So the weird thing about AEW is that AEW feels first and foremost like a passion project for Tony Khan. When it's something that someone starts a business and you see people sell off those assets, it always feels like that's just because they're in it to make money. That's the whole point of the business. Whereas wrestling always has that aspect of passion. Tony Khan, like most of us, got involved because he's a huge fan, and that comes off in the way he runs his show,
Right.
and the fact that he's even doing it at all. So it feels like the kind of thing where you would just kind of scoff at that and go, well, Tony Khan would never sell his company. However, before even any of the stuff with the scandal with Vince McMahon came out, he was looking to sell his company and did. Like, that's another thing where it just felt like the McMahons will be in charge of WWE forever. And then all of a sudden you hear these rumblings like, oh, maybe they're bringing in Nick Khan to sell the company down the line. And then after a few years, that all turned out to be true.
Right.
So I don't think it's anything that would happen imminently, because I don't think AEW is like a sinking ship or anything like that. But I also don't know what they would have to offer Tony Khan for him to buy them out. Now, would they just want to buy in and be part of the company? And would that be anything that Tony Khan is interested in? I don't know. It's weird. It's interesting. It's strange to think that Vince McMahon would go after another company. I believe Shane more than I would believe that Vince McMahon would get involved. Other than he just feels petty angry at WWE for some reason, which I don't feel like. I still feel like that would be weird. But
It, it
what happened?
I think the weird thing is kind of how this started was like maybe a few weeks ago. There was a rumor that Shane McMahon was going to join AEW. I don't know, as like
Yeah,
talent or what. It started from maybe a conversation that
yeah,
anything
but
with the internet.
well,
Right away they see somebody with somebody, and a rumor starts. It's like, oh,
yeah,
Shane
well,
McMahon was talking to this wrestler. It must be,
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
from what I understand, like so Shane McMahon is been in the business for so long that he knows a lot of the guys that are in AEW.
right,
A lot of the top guys in AEW all wrestled in WWE previously. So the impression I got was, Conrad Thompson on one of his shows was talking about Shane McMahon maybe buying AEW as like a silly kind of one-off comment, like
right,
what's Shane up to? He was like, oh, maybe he's going to buy AEW, something like that, and that then they got messaged like that might not be as crazy as it sound as you may think, but the impression I got from the whole thing is that Shane was talking to one of the AEW wrestlers, and then they're just talking about like because he's not doing anything like you know, what are you doing lately? Nothing. Like, oh, you should come work here. And he's like, wouldn't that be crazy if like I actually came work here? How would that even work? And then they kind of talk about, that doesn't mean that there's anything serious about it. It's just the way you talk with friends. Wrestlers do that all the time.
right.
I do that with anyone I talk to about bringing them into Wildcat Sports, or people always do that when they talk to me about if they want to come in. And, it's not a serious discussion. Sometimes it is to feel it out, but, you know, people are always kind of putting out feelers just to see what their options are.
Yeah, I mean, you never know, but I mean, I guess it's not the craziest thing we've ever seen. You
Yeah.
know, 25 years ago, we wouldn't have seen Vince McMahon buying WCW.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in 1999, you know, WCW still really hot. Like you would
Yeah.
have never thought, oh, the McMahons are gonna eventually they're gonna own these guys.
Yeah.
And but now everything that happened with the scandal and everything, I would think that Vince McMahon would be like people would keep as much distance away from him as possible.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing is that so when the WCW thing happened, I mean, they just had that Death of WCW miniseries.
Yeah.
And the truth is that there's a lot of factors, but the point behind is that a company merged. They weren't like they didn't have the attachment to it that Ted Turner did. Ted Turner kept a show that wasn't making him money on the air because he loved the product.
Right.
Then a company changes and then they don't want it anymore and there's no one there to fight for it, so it happens. The same thing happened with Vince McMahon. Like if you merge with UFC and then they it's not his baby anymore. He's not in control anymore, you know? So if something happened with Tony Khan's company where something happened, a merger, those kinds of things, that's how that kind of thing happens. Or if AEW starts getting publicly pointed out that they're in the red to the degree where they need help and they need investors of that kind. I don't think, I haven't heard anything like that right now, but that doesn't mean that couldn't happen. But more often than not, it's less about, this guy wants to give it up or not, as much as just the businesses move in and out and how well the company is doing truly versus how much of it is just trying to keep it afloat because they want it to be there. Because that's what most wrestling companies are. I mean, even most promotions on the indies, it's a lot of guys who just want to have wrestling be around,
Right. Yeah, I mean, since we chatted last, I know a lot of things have changed for AEW. You know, their the ratings are down. Their live show attendance is like way down. I mean, you see a
Yeah.
lot of pictures that circulate on the internet, and I don't, I've never actually been to an AEW show, so I don't know what's true and what's the internet and what's BS. But
Yeah.
usually, when rumors start floating, there tends to be some validity to it.
Yeah.
You know. Um,
Yeah. I think more than anything, it's just that WWE's gotten hot. It's that WWE's not perceived the same way it was 5 years ago when AEW got started. Because I mean, if you look at the numbers, WWE's numbers have kind of gone up as AEW's have kind of gone down. So it feels like it's the same. I would argue it's the same people are watching wrestling every week, and it's a lot of wrestling. It's a lot of content. AEW's got 5 hours every week. WWE's got 5 hours every week, and that's excluding new YouTube content, new stuff on Peacock, pay-per-views, premium live events.
I mean,
Any of those kinds of
it's
things.
hard to keep up with everything.
Yeah. So if you're a wrestling fan, you might go, all right, well, I'm only going to watch 5 hours this week. I'm not going to watch 10 hours of wrestling. I'm going to watch 5 hours of wrestling. It used to be, I'll watch Dynamite because I'm not going to watch Raw. Raw sucks. Well, now maybe that fan thinks, I like Raw, so he watches Raw. And then his quota is kind of moved up, so he skips another show. I think it's more that than anything else. It's not that AEW's changed as much as I think their edge was, to me, or a lot of their marketing when they first come out was, we're an alternative to WWE.
Right.
Like, if you don't like WWE and you miss real wrestling, come watch AEW. And I don't feel like that narrative rings as true as it used to. WWE in 2019 versus WWE in 2024 are completely different animals,
Absolutely.
especially in perception.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Monday Night Raw. I mean, a 3-hour Monday Night Raw felt like an 8-hour movie. Like it was hard to watch. Like the product was struggling. Triple H was talking about a couple weeks ago. They had a press conference and saying that when they go on Netflix in January of next year, which is it's right around the corner, saying that Netflix, when they have WWE on, it's going to hit 80% of the world. I mean, what do you think is going to change once their product? I mean, they have way more eyes on it, in 6-7 months.
It's first it'll hopefully show them where they could grow globally into different markets. You see that a lot of their premium live events now, the big four, they're trying to keep in the United States, but they keep going international. I think they're trying to
Right.
tap into all those international markets. And first, I think that it's a good metric to show, like, we're getting a lot of people that are consistently watching in this part of Europe or in this part of Asia or this, those kinds of things.
Right.
And then they can start opening up their world touring kind of thing. But at the same time, their bread and butter will always be here in the United States. It's a U.S. based company. Even though they kind of cut back on some of the live events, they still do live events. I remember when that story came out, like, 6 months ago, a year ago, about how they're cutting out B shows or something. They're cutting out like live events. It was like they took out like a dozen cities from the rotation. That's all that ended up being.
Right.
Like they still go on tour doing house shows. It's just they cut back. They kind of assessed, like, this one has been in here for legacy reasons, but every time we go there, we only draw like 3,000 people as opposed to the average of 5 or 6 or whatever it's supposed to be. So they adjusted that. I think in terms of the product, it'll be hard to make Raw anything different from what the other things are. I think that Triple H, though, has shown, and it'll be interesting to see how much of this is what he likes and thinks of wrestling versus how much he thinks the market needs of wrestling. Like when he was running NXT, I always felt that he was making NXT come off that way as like the super indie promotion,
Right.
because it was something different from the main roster. Not necessarily this is how Triple H would present wrestling, as much as, WWE is doing its own thing. Let's try and make this brand have its own edge. But more often than not, that always gets homogenized. That, like, all those talent, they come up, Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, all those guys, and that's changed the way the style of wrestling is on the main roster in WWE. That, if you think back to when ECW was a third brand, they tried to sell it as that was a new thing, but how long did it take before that was just the same as everything else?
Right.
So I don't know how much, because I've seen people say, like, it's not going to be PG anymore. And what does that mean? But it's like, how are you going to have one show on USA under all those same restrictions that Raw is under now versus something where the rules are off? Because it's still the same brand. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to kind of carve and make one show different, if that is what they want to do. I think it's going to be more or less, if I'm being honest, the same. I don't think it's going to change that much, because I think the product that Triple H is presenting comes off the way I feel he probably wants it to be. Now we'll see, though, because that's the thing, is that once you don't have any restrictions, you can kind of see how someone would color it. But I think sometimes restrictions are good. Like, as an artist, if you just give someone a piece of paper and they say just go at it, sometimes you need some kind of structure. Say, well, tell me something to draw. Give me some color, like a specific palette. Sometimes it's easier for an artist to do something with a blue, a red, and a red crayon than it is with a full pack of 1,000, because it's too many options. You don't know where you're going. So it's interesting, but my money would be that it's not going to change that much.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't think it's going to have the Howard Stern effect. So when Howard Stern went from regular radio, he went to Sirius. It's been 20 years now.
Well,
I think they got a little crazy.
Yeah.
And then it calmed down. But I don't think this will. I think you're right. I don't think we're not going to really see much.
Well, it's like the thing that people argue against AEW is that they don't appeal to the wider audience. WWE has been successful as the most successful wrestling company because they try to market towards non-wrestling fans. Right. They try to not exclude, I guess is a better way to say it. They don't exclude non-wrestling fans. A wrestling fan can go to a WWE show and have a good time. But if you've never seen wrestling before, if you're a kid that's never seen wrestling before, if you're a mom of a kid who likes wrestling and you don't know it, you can go and it feels very accessible. You don't feel like you're not in the club. And as a wrestling fan, when you're a hardcore wrestling fan, again, that's what was a great appeal for AEW, and still is that this feels like it's our thing, like it's just for wrestling fans, and I can see that, but I don't know if WWE would want to make something on Netflix, if it's going to get accessed by everyone, more limited in its scope. If anything, it'll be the opposite of what I think a lot of hardcore fans want, which is it'll be more trying to appeal to a broad audience because they're going to be going into so many markets. If anything, it might be more, it'll change the product, but not, I think, the way people would hope that it would,
I think it's going to be more, it might be a little more edgier when it comes to like maybe violence, possibly.
Maybe.
But like I think like when the crowd is, because I think they've been having a lot of issues on Fox. When the crowd is chanting vulgar stuff in the audience, you got it, you hear nothing, and then the screens are even going black.
Well,
because of the signs, I guess that fans are having up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that USA is a lot better about it because USA it feels like more like someone on the button. Like they try to just bleep the word, as opposed Fox just takes it all out. They're like, we don't want to deal with this. So, but after the fall or starting next year, SmackDown will be on USA, which hopefully it's not great, but it's better than what it was in the sense of on Fox. I think the way they censor stuff on USA is annoying, but it's not nearly as bad as the way Fox does. So I think once they leave Fox, that'll be fine. But I do understand the idea of changing the rating specifically for censorship reasons. That doesn't mean that they'll then be uncensored where they'll behave like they're uncensored. It just means the uncensored quality of the programming will stop that kind of thing from happening.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, they got to appeal to more people and a more worldwide audience. So you're not going to want to alienate a bunch of new possible viewers by having
it's weird,
too outrageous of a product.
I mean, I when I first started watching wrestling as a kid, it was during the Attitude Era, and I loved. I fell in love with wrestling, but I also felt like sometimes if my mom walked into the room, in the living room, that I almost felt like I needed to change the channel, depending on what was happening.
What the hell are you watching?
Like really. So, and do you want to introduce that? Is that worth it? Especially because right now they're making more money and they're arguably doing better business than they ever have in the history of the company, and they're a PG product. So the idea of being like they need to change, like why would you fix something that's not broken,
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Well, hey, if you're just joining us, this is ATW All Things Wrestling Podcast. Welcome back, longtime guest Sammy Kiss, the voice of Wildcat Sports. Hey, Sammy, did you catch you on my new intro video? Did you see?
I did see me in there. I appreciate that. I appreciate the nod. Yeah.
Yeah. So, my partner, she put together the intro video and got you on there with Hammerstone, Alexander Hammerstone. I got to interview him in November here in Northern Arizona. Man, that guy I'm just waiting for him to show up at the Rumble or something. I don't know how much of you caught of him if you're a big Hammerstone fan, but man, I think outside of WWE, this guy's got to be my favorite right now.
Yeah, he's a hoss. Well, I mean, they just signed Jacob Fatu, so there's some MLW champ in influx there. So Hammerstone would be great. He's that's a guy that when you look at, you might think, are you a pro wrestler? Like without any other knowledge, that guy reeks of being a pro. So
yeah, but he's got like an old school vibe, but he's not. You know what I mean? Like he's obviously wrestling today, but like if you picked a pro wrestler, say 10, 15 years ago, you saw Hammerstone, you're like, yeah, that guy, he's in the WWE, right? I mean, he's got the WWE kind of look to him.
Yeah, he passes the airport check. That's where Jim Ross was always told by Vince McMahon, dude, you go to the airport and look around, like who stands out? If you're at the airport, who stands out? Who's the one that everyone else there is looking at? Because those are the guys that WWE for so long tried to acquire. Those larger than life people. Hulk Hogan is someone that stands out in every room that he's in for several reasons.
Right.
So.
But anyways, man, tell me what's going on with Wildcat Sports. You guys got any shows coming up? What do you got to promote. I won't keep you too long today. I just wanted
Oh, I
to
appreciate
kind of
that. Yeah,
catch up with you and kind of
man.
shoot the shit.
There's a lot going on with Wildcat sports. First, uh, Luke Hawks kind of let the cat out of the bag recently due to some personnel issues that we've had, which I guess I'll address in a minute. But one of the things he brought up is that I don't know if I've even divulged this to you because I try not to make a big deal out of it. But
Right.
I am one of the co-owners of Wildcat Sports now.
Okay.
So
Well, congratulations,
yeah,
man.
I
Congratulations.
appreciate it. Yeah. So yeah, myself, Matt Lancy, this man, Scott Crampton, who we brought into the fold, and Luke Hawks now are running the operation. Luke is still doing his Hollywood big man routine, where he just got signed on to do some more work choreographing for a new wrestling show in California. So he's always filming stuff, wrestling related stuff. I know he's going to be doing stuff because they're reusing his stuff from Logan and the new Deadpool and Wolverine. So I'm
Oh,
sure
okay.
you'll see Logan, Luke Hawks all over that as well.
Nice.
But so it allows me and Matt Lancy to kind of run the day to day for Wildcat Sports, stuff like that. So keeps me very busy. So that's kind of now public knowledge, which is a little weird because I still have my persona of being the backstage correspondent, so balancing those kind of things out. Um, but we've got a lot of stuff going on. We've got a big show that we're building up to at the end of the year. The Revolution Rumble is always what is like our anniversary show, so things are always moving towards that goal. So we're always trying to keep things focused, or at least I do try to keep things focused, building towards that big show. But coming up in a couple weeks, Wildcat Sports presents X-Rated. So we just talked about family-friendly stuff and no censorship. Wildcat is very much, I liken it to WWE, being very family-friendly.
Right.
But our X-Rated event is our one show a year where it's 18 and over only. There's no limitation on language. We hold it at a local New Orleans um, performance show and bar at Southport Hall. I actually just saw Fozzy perform there just a few months ago. But
Nice.
so yeah, so it's a great venue. We pack the house of as many fans as we get in there, and it's most people's favorite show of the year because they can drink and they can kind of let loose and have you never really know what's going to happen. So we're
Yeah,
excited
no
for
doubt.
that. X-Rated. We're bringing in Zeus is taking on Tessa Blanchard, which is pretty great. Having some CMLL people there.
Nice.
I know Danny Flamingo will be there. Slime Season will be there. The top Wildcat guys will be there as well. So it's gonna be a great show.
And when is that?
That's gonna be July 27th, Saturday, July 27th. Visit wildcat.eventbrite.com for tickets and more information.
Fantastic. Well, Sammy, thanks for breaking the big news
Yeah,
on us
man. Yeah.
today.
Yeah, I
So
kind of buried the lead, I know, but yeah. So a lot of moving parts keeps me busy, but I'm glad I was able to come on here and chat with you a little bit. I could talk about wrestling all day, so I know you know that.
yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm gonna be doing some traveling for some wrestling, so it's finally time. I'm gonna come out
Come on down, man.
and
About
see
yeah,
you, man.
you're right. It's been far too long. You can't get away with not coming to a show for much longer. So I think you need to come down to New Orleans and see what Wildcat's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you're the owner, man. Maybe I got a little VIP treatment. Say,
Of
hey,
course,
I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But anyways, man, thank you so much for coming on today, Sammy. It's always a pleasure, man. Like I said, just wanted to come on, just kind of shoot the shit, see what's going on in your world. Sounds like definitely you broke some big news. So it's always good to have you on, and love to have you on again. So you got the show coming up on July 27th. What do you have? Anything right behind that, or what other shows are
So
coming up there?
Wildcat. So I will say that we're going to have our first show in Lafayette on August 24th. We're working with the Cajun Muscle Expo. It's a bodybuilding promotion, so it's going to be a bodybuilding show. But in between, we're going to have Wildcat wrestling shows in Lafayette as well. And then we've got some more stuff coming up, in months right after that, which we'll put out as they go out. So just visit wildcatsports.com. And you can follow me on all my social media as Sammy Kiss at the underscore Sammy underscore Kiss on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. I'm always posting stuff about what's coming up, so make sure you follow.
Absolutely. Make sure you stay tuned Sammy Kiss, thank you very much for joining us today, man. Happy late 4th of July. And
Yeah, happy 4th.
I don't know where you're at, but it's hot as hell. Feels like everywhere.
Dude. Yeah, I don't think it matters where you're at. It's always hot. So
Yeah. Well, stay cool, man. Sammy Kiss, Wildcat Sports, thank you for joining us today. I am your host, Tony Twist. This is ATW, All Things Wrestling Podcast, and we are